Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Just to give you 1 minute so we can admit all the people.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi there.
Hi, everyone.
So, good morning for some of you, good afternoon for others, and good night for others. Welcome to the first Conversations for the Planet, organized by DESIS. In the beginning of 2020, as you launched a new challenge to all DESIS Labs and to the design community at large, placing the climate and environmental sustainability at the heart of our academic and research practice. It was, and it's still very clear, the need and urgency to orient and upgrade our DESIS activities to respond to a new wave of social innovations for the planet. The environmental crisis is giving us signals urgently that we need to act to protect our shared home, even if it isn't really new for those that have been involved in this field of design from Papanek to the DESIS Network. What is fundamentally different is the urgency of taking action and the way people are self-organizing to tackle this problem. Some of the bottom-up climate change movements must be supported by the community of designers with the same energy and drive that have led their intervention in the areas of social innovation. The design community, particularly all DESIS labs around the world, must pull together and embrace a leadership role, both through knowledge and practice, to find solutions that will help regenerate the planet. And this is the main concept behind this event, to act as a tool to build and share knowledge about social initiatives for the planet, challenging our DESIS labs to develop more projects to tackle some problems related to the climate emergency and environmental sustainability. And the topic of our first conversation is social innovation in post-catastrophic contexts. I would like also to add that this event is also organized within the framework of activities of the new European Bauhaus initiative, of which DESIS Network recently became a partner. As most of you probably know, the new European Bauhaus aims at creating a new lifestyle that matches sustainability with good design, that needs less carbon, and that is inclusive and affordable for all, while respecting the diversity that we have in Europe and beyond. It also wants to translate the European Green Deal into tangible change on the ground that improves our daily life. Having participated in the co-design of this initiative and becoming an official partner, we want to contribute with our network expertise and will be fostering events within this scope. And now we have the pleasure of having a representative from NEB, Maria Helena Camarascu, that I'm inviting to address this initiative. So Maria Helena, the floor is yours to present the NEB initiative.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone from Brussels. My name is Maria Elena Camarascu, and I am part of the European Bauhaus team at the Joint Research Center. I'm also going to share with you a presentation. Yes. The topic of social innovation, environmental protection, and taking action to prevent future catastrophes is crucial now and in the near future. And the European Bauhaus recognizes this, and it's taking a series of concerted actions to build a strong community and engage citizens, states, and stakeholders from all around the world in the coming years to create together a more sustainable and safe future for everyone. The initiative was set out to bring the European Green Deal closer to the citizens' daily lives and to their homes. In January 2021, we have launched the co-design phase to gain inputs about aesthetical, sustainable, and inclusive solutions and what this means for different people. The first phase called on everyone to join a conversation to rethink the way that we live together. This is a timeline, and this is the NEB, six months in the making. So the co-design phase ended in late June, and it gathered more than 2,000 examples from people all over the EU and beyond. It engaged people across sectors and disciplines, and in more than 200 multidisciplinary conversations that took part during this time. In April, we had the very first European Bauhaus conference, where topics such as bridging art and technology, driving change and driving hope through this initiative were discussed. And we had more than 80,000 viewers from 85 countries. This is our communication figure. So we are engaging with a very wide audience of interesting people on a variety of topics through Instagram, through Twitter, through our newsletter or Pinterest. On a variety of topics, we share inspirational projects that we see or new initiatives and projects. The September package that was launched this month included an official commission communication, a first package of calls for proposals for projects, and the first ceremony of the new European Bauhaus Prize on the 16th
Maria
of
Helena,
September.
just to let you know that we are still on the first slide.
This is strange.
Yeah, we still see the first one, so.
Can you let me know what you can see now?
It's always the first slide. If you try again to share.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, now we are seeing another one.
Okay, I'll just leave it like this then. I won't move it anymore. Okay, so building on the co-design phase, it became very apparent that we need to go forward with having a multi-level approach to transformation. We need to mix the global approach to a local grassroots level, because that's the place that's most closest to people's daily experiences. We need to go forward with a participatory and a transdisciplinary approach. After the listening phase of the co-design phase, we have also seen four thematic axes of transformation, which we have to seek: the need to reconnect to nature and to rebuild a more equal relationship between human and non-human, built and unbuilt in a variety of places. We need to regain a sense of belonging and a rediscovery of a feeling of a place, of what makes a place unique, a spirit of community. We need to prioritize the places and the people that need it the most, and we need a long-term and life cycle thinking in the industrial ecosystem. To achieve this, we need to impact at three different levels at the same time. We need to transform places on the ground. We need to transform the enabling ecosystem for innovation, and we need to diffuse new meanings for education and culture and change our mindsets and change the way that we think. We need to set the policy context, and for this, a set of EU programs which are cross-disciplinary and cross-sectoral will be mobilized. And the initiative will also work with the member states to mobilize EU resources and private investments in the member states. Funding instruments such as Horizon Europe, LIFE programs, the COSME, and the single market programs are going to be also engaged to foster innovation and research. On the regulatory framework, a review will be done together with the authorities from member states to test how public procurement and regulatory simplification can aid in delivering the objectives of the European Bauhaus. Going forward with the community that we have built, the Commission will also set a European Bauhaus Lab that will co-create, prototype, and test new tools, solutions, and policy recommendations in a collaborative and transdisciplinary manner, also reaching out to society and working with people on the ground. The European Bauhaus Lab will work with the official partners of the initiative, with a high-level roundtable, with supported projects, and everyone who wishes to contribute and to engage in the concrete implementation on the ground. From the local, regional scale to international authorities and organizations, to industry and civil society, always keeping a co-creation and participatory approach throughout. There will be an F Festival, which the Commission will organize for the first time in spring 2022, aiming at enlarging and strengthening the sense of community around the initiative and further foster the engagement of citizens with the ongoing projects and results. A report on the progress of this actions will be published in 2022 to give greater visibility to the outcomes. And a little bit about the prizes. The 10 categories were presented, And they were ranging from renovated buildings in the spirit of circularity, preserved and transformed cultural heritage, reinvented places to meet and share, interdisciplinary education models. All the projects were very inspirational. They showcased very creative ways to integrate the core values, which are inclusion, aesthetics, and sustainability, in a concrete manner on the ground, and to enact meaningful transformation of places. The awards were given to existing projects, and the Rising Star Award was meant for concept or ideas submitted by young talents that were age 30 or less. The 20 winners were awarded at the ceremony on the 16th of September. These are just some pictures from the award ceremony. And this is a picture with a very, very happy winners. And if you want to stay in touch, you can do so by visiting our website or our Instagram page, and you can always reach out and become part of the community of the European Bauhaus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Helena, for your presentation. The NEV initiative, it's really something that is challenging all the community. Now we continue our conversation with Ezio and Beatrice. Ezio, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Ezio, you just mute your mic. Okay.
Now I'm here. And thanks to Elena to introduce us to everything that happened and is going to happen in this beautiful initiative called the New European Bauhaus. I will be tempted to say something more about that because it's a very challenging story, but it's not the topic today. I hope that we will have other opportunity. But I will only take some points that has been mentioned by Maria Elena, just to say that many of them were at the were with us, with the people that started DESIS from the beginning. And from the beginning, our specificity, because of those the same goal, could be the goal, moving from different directions. So our direction was the one that we thought that was very promising. There was not only to bet on our capabilities as designer to move in that direction, but to look at social innovation, or more precisely, should be said, the transformative social innovation that started to appear at the beginning of this century, and in some way to use our observation on social innovation and to work with social innovation and inside social innovation to try to go in the same direction. Well, now, more than 10 years later, last year, we started to think that something should be done, because the context in which we were telling those stories 10 or 15 years ago was very different from now. And to summarize in which way is different, I could use the rhetoric, by the way, has been used also by Maria Elena. That is why we work, why we act as a designer, why some of us are also very proactive in trying to do something as designer, is to try to do what is needed today to avoid worst catastrophes tomorrow. So this has been in some way the idea that was behind every action that we did for at least 10 years as DESIS. So what is the difference today? What we started to have the perception that has to change is that those catastrophes that we saw as something that could happen in the future, unfortunately, at this moment are here. And this is why we started to discuss, and also this series of conversation, the Conversation for the Planet, has been promoted. So the idea is that we have in some way to change something in our attitude, considering that we are in a context that is not only the one of those that has to prepare ourselves against a possible catastrophe, but also is those in which not only we still have to prepare ourselves for possible future catastrophe, but we have also to recognize that the catastrophes are already here. And this, of course, change not only the way in which we do in a term of giving more urgency to what we do. And this for sure is true. We have to do the same thing that we did together, but with much more urgent way. And this probably will be and is and will be the main part of what will be the change in our design culture. So to accelerate the same thing that we did in the last period. But at the same time, we have to learn something that is brand new. And it's not only what to do to avoid catastrophe, but also what to do when we are inside a catastrophe or when we are exactly after the moment in which some peak in this catastrophe happens. And unfortunately, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen more and more frequently. And we have no reason to think that this will not be what will characterize the next future. So we thought together that a whole stream of new social innovation has to be seen, a new strategy has to be developed to say which society are more capable to face what happens when everything that was supposed to be normal collapses. And what are the new social forms that emerge, and what design can do, if design can do, to prepare ourselves and to practically act when something like this happens. And to conclude, I will not say that this design in and immediately after a catastrophic event is the only thing that we have to do. I like to underline that we should look also whatever we have done until now to prepare the society toward a future situation in which hopefully less catastrophic event will happen. But at the same time, we have to open a new line. So we started this conversation in a very friendly way, in different conditions. And we thought that it could be very meaningful to start our series of conversation using this very specific but very important and urgent issue as the main topic, just to give the strong signals of the dimension of the change that we have to face. Afterward, the problem was that there was not so many people in the group of who was working with us that was dealing with this topic. And I was lucky enough to meet Beatrice Gisclard in a meeting, in a conference in Nîmes a few months ago. And we started a conversation, and I find out that she was the one, I have to say, for what regard myself, the only one who was already since a long time studying this kind of topic, studying what happened when there is a catastrophe, how people react, and in case, what design can do. And she has also done a PhD. She's designer, but she has done a PhD in geography on this topic, so putting together some kind of social geographic issue with the design. And since her PhD, she's working in this line of activity. So I will give the floor to her because she is the one that really can bring us some new, or in any case, I don't know if it's really new, but it's new for us, ideas. And I will shortly conclude the introduction. So she's Beatrice Gisclard, and she is a teacher and researcher at the University of Nîmes in France. And she is co-leader of the Master Design Innovation and Society. And as I said, she is a doctor with a PhD in what I said, something related to catastrophic events. So Beatrice, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ezio. Let me see if I can share my screen. Hi, everyone. Can you see it? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes, it is okay.
Thanks. Great. So thank you very much, Ezio, for this introduction. Effectively, we had a long conversation about it, but I wanted to put this in the. Oh, sorry, can you see screen? I can go ahead on the screen. See, okay, it's okay.
Yes, it's working.
Thank you. Sorry. The Meadows report, published in 1972, conclude that perpetual material growth will sooner or later lead to a collapse of the world around us. Collapse does not necessarily mean the end of the humanity, but a sharp decline in population with a significant deterioration in living conditions. This summer, the 6th edition of IPCC report confirms these forecasts by showing that they are not only real, but have accelerated, as Ezio said. So unfortunately, the time for debate is over. The catastrophe is no longer ahead of us, and we are in it, in the era of Anthropocene. This photo is from September 2020 in California during the mega fires, and not from Blade Runner 2049 movie. So the collapse has begun. It is political, said the anthropologist Alain Berthaud. And alongside the increase in natural disasters, there are other threats to humanity. And their global scope and unknown magnitude challenge all patterns of thinking. The domino effects of their impact know no borders, and we must admit that we're not prepared. Natural hazards, tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, and so else have always existed, of course, but they only take on the meaning of disaster when they affect people and their living environment. And for example, flooding occurs when there are human issues at stake. Otherwise, it is a high water event. Thus, the individual is often considered as the weak link, whose so-called maladaptive behaviors leads to his downfall, overwhelmed by the event. The United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, UNISDR, established in 1999, provide an international framework for reducing the impact of disasters. Here, it is interesting to note that initially it was aimed at reducing vulnerability, but now it is focused on resilience, just moving from managing the cause to managing the consequences. And this poster showed that the victims concerned, in this case, the victim of Hurricane Katrina, which devastated New Orleans in 2005, have clearly understood this. So on the basis of the previous and ongoing catastrophes, which social fund proved to be the most resilient one? The elements I am sharing with you are not exhaustive, but they seem relevant to me because they show the multiple facets that social innovation can take in the face of these challenges. First of all, the DESIS Network, Virtual Operations Support Team network. At a time where we are constantly pointing out the harmful effects of social networks on our lives, it's interesting for me to note that, as Bernard Stiegler described it, they are both the cure and the poison. In the event of disaster, the key point for the emergency services is to obtain reliable information, to understand the situation, to know the number of victims in order to dimension the aid. Internet users on the networks collect information from witnesses or victims of the event. They cross-check the data in order to verify its veracity. And these volunteers provide information to the authorities and to the internet user in need of information. What is notable is that they aggregate according to their availability, and that the structure of digital networks frees them from the spatial dimensions of the disaster. More informally, Communities of internet users, because they have integrated social networks into their daily lives, react immediately to events. An emblematic example is the #OpenDoor movement that emerged on the night of the Bataclan attacks in Paris in November 2015. Terrorists were attacking people in the street and there was total panic. In order to signal places where people could take refuge, people on the Twitter network mobilized in this way, enabling many people to find refuge. The hunt for the terrorists responsible for the Paris attack continued in Brussels. On Twitter, the #Brussels lockdown had been the term of choice for people discussing the raids. But the term was overtaken by Twitter users posting pictures and videos of cats to make sure that any linking of operational detail were drawn out. The Belgian police responded the next day with humor to these tweets, as you can see on this screen. And during the Harvey hurricane, these residents of a flooded retirement home were identified and located thanks to the network. And the post, as you can see, was retweeted over 29,000 times. In this way, social networks can be a form of social innovation in the emergency. Crossing spatial dimensions with the strength of social networks, collectives have been formed volunteer geographical information based on citizen census. They help to geolocate the impact of the disaster effectively. In the event of an earthquake, for example, destroyed access road or collapsed building prevent or delay the arrival of emergency services. And it is important to be able to map them as soon as possible. OpenStreetMap is the free geographic data resulting from Wikipedia-like citizen contributions. In the event of disasters, contributors come together in the humanitarian OpenStreetMap collective, and each maps a part of the area, as here, as you can see it, during the Mexico City earthquake in 2019. At the municipal level, we also seen the emergence of citizens groups that are organizing themselves to deal with the risk. What is new, because aid to victims has existed for a long time, is what exists for prevention of pre-crisis. For example, the Jean de Garonne Association, whose entire municipal area is subject to flooding, has set up a house of water and flooding, which is becoming a tourist and community center. People gather there on a daily basis, which creates social links that can be mobilized in the event of flooding, as you can see on the bottom. On the slide of the Sentinel network, it is the upstream-downstream solidarity that is organized. The inhabitants located upstream of the river monitor the rise of the water, as you can see it on the notebook, and create a human alert chain in order to warn those who risk being flooded downstream. In France, there are communal civil security reserves. Volunteers register with the town hall in order to be mobilized in the event of a crisis to support the emergency services. What is interesting to note here is that they are a precious help because they know the inhabitants and they can report an isolated or elderly person or a particular situation that the emergency services would not know about. Under another name, we find this principle as here in England, in Devonshire, but they act in the same way. Another approach is to federate around artistic approaches to the issue of risk. Here, a collective organized the Jour inondable event on the prevention of flooding in the Loire, where people will experience together what happens during a flood. social innovation can also find inspiration for coping with disasters in ancestral knowledge. Here, in a Vanuatu island, where people suffer the ravages of cyclones, traditional architecture are more resistant to the force of the wind and as it's stated, the design with the roof usually reaching the ground level, they are able to withstand high winds and cyclonic conditions, providing enhanced protection from cyclonic wind. So now, how could design play a role? First, I must explain here why, as a designer, I became interested in this subject. For years, I've been aware, as many people, that we are collectively heading for disaster. I experimented with eco-design, thinking that I was responding to the problems. But I noticed that despite the knowledge we had of climate change, we are not changing our model. When I went back to university, I wanted to understand the psychological mechanism behind this. So before the PhD doctorate, I got a master's degree in environmental psychology. And then I discovered the issue of risk. Living myself in a flood zone, I also discovered that people could still die in floods in France. And that made me wonder, what could I do as a designer to contribute to what Alain Findeli said about the ability of the world? I then embarked on a PhD in geography. Indeed, the environmental aspect of the relationships between people and their territory seemed necessary to me to complete my approach on risk. Natural disasters are situated. We live in a globalized world, but we live also in a territory at risk. Then I present here my doctoral research as a first case study. In 2002, the River Gardon, you can see the Pont du Gard here, completely devastated the Gard department. These photos shows the extent of this event. As a designer, I'm trying to work on the empathy that Christian Bazin talks about, and I'm trying to understand the psychosocial mechanism that guide behavior in the event of crisis. As I talked previously, I showed the incapacity of the individual to correctly face it, but there is no silly days. We have to engage the reflection about what motivation guide the individual to do what they do. So the skill of design lies also in its ability to ask questions and express complexity. Here, from my interviews, is the decision-making process of risk management in France. It is a perfect example of French administration, but we have to understand why and to show it in a different way. My objective was to develop the inhabitants' capacity in the face of flood risk. The authorities had a recurrent vision of passive inhabitants facing what was happening to them. Based on scientific input obtained during the research, I worked on fictitious scenarios, and the players had to imagine strategies to deal with disaster on their territory in the future, here in 2030. The second workshop was to imagine the 20 hours of the flood. The players were divided into teams, and they had to explain how they would manage, knowing that each team had different constraints and map. At the end, they had to choose the best scenario altogether. I succeeded in showing through this creative workshop and the previous research that they were experts on their territory, and that there was a real desire to act collectively if they were given this opportunity. And I advocate here the idea of territorialized social innovation. The case study number 2 refers to heat wave and is a funded research. This research was initiated in early 2020 after the GAR experienced a national record temperature over 47 degrees in June a year earlier. We started by going to local people to collect heat wave memories. Unlike flooding, heat waves are what we call a diffuse risk. It is difficult to determine a precise beginning or end. It has no visual representation, and the contours of its territory are difficult to delimit. The first workshop aimed to define the feelings of the heat wave and their bearability. It seemed important to us to work on the collective imagination because in the end, little literature in the social science deals with the heat wave and its effects, even though it is the natural risk that has caused the most deaths in France recently, almost 20,000 deaths in 2003. In fiction, prospective scenarios to engage participants in imagining the future world in a warmer climate and defining what needs they might have. A dreaming helmet was designed to accompany them in these projections, and newspapers from the future were provided to them as a trigger. A second workshop happened online due to the pandemic context. We tried to map the actors, institutional or not. And this research is still in progress, and the third workshop was held at the end of August to consider the creation of a heat wave risk observatory at a local level. The third and final case study is the pedagogical part. As Ezio said, as a co-responsible of a master at University in Nîmes, it seemed very important to me to include it in my reflection to the risk. It is perhaps the most ambitious as it aims at educating designers on the issue of risk. Last year, as part of the DESIS Master's program, I initiated a design project during 3 months on this subject in partnership with the GAR Department Council. Anticipating territorial trajectory for 2050-2070 in the context of climate change, the department asked students to think about water resources, both in terms of flooding and drought. Their problem was that they did not know how to involve the inhabitants in these issues. The first group focused its project on the observation that although people were aware of the climate change, they did not see the levers for action at their level, particularly for water use. In the second group, the students focused on the cause of drought and climate change. The conclusion was that it is possible to move towards more frugal solutions with a step-by-step commitment to a personal approach with collective repercussions. Students in the third group used social networks, especially Facebook groups, to get in touch with local people. The collection of this sensitive data made it possible to show that flooding is a significant issue, while at the same time showing that the water circuit, the resource, was not visible. Research and understanding of the technical constraints related to water was then carried out. They proposed an escape game to make the drinking water circuit more visible. I would like to conclude this short presentation with 3 thoughts on this subject. The first one is that risk communication is a huge challenge in a crisis situation. As Craig Fugate said, he was the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Emergency Management Agency in United States. And he said just after the Sandy storm in New York, we need to stop just using social media as a megaphone to broadcast information and instead use it to have a two-way conversation with the public. And I find it very inspiring. In a world of media overload, citizens' expectations are all the greater where they are confronted with uncertainty when a disaster destabilizes their bearings. One of the major obstacles to appropriate risk management is the lack of confidence in institutional communication. Local social relations help to build the trust that can be relied upon in a crisis situation. The second one, warning communication, is a topic for both designers and semioteticians. When we have crossed the threshold on the reference points, we got into the unknown, and there are no longer sufficient words or adequate colors. For example, on the left is the map given by the French government during the peak of the pandemic alert. You can see alert, reinforced alert, maximum alert, and I think it's interesting. Ditto for the temperatures value. How do you go beyond the reference scale? And the last one, those who are in the denial see an optimistic future. Those who are in shock or depression see a dark future. Is it possible to find a third way between dystopia and utopia? Realistic enough to face the problems and dreaming of a less bleak future for our children. I conclude with Patrick Lagadec, a pioneer research in France in minor risk research. He said, the essence of crisis is the destruction of references. We switch to another space-time defined by other rules and which requires above all a strong capacity for questioning and inventiveness. The future is not what will happen, but what will do. And the next step is to engage a community of research designers on these issues with DESIS Network. I will thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Beatrice. Ezio?
Yes. So, first of all, thanks, Beatrice. You really very generously shared your hard work in the previous years and to make me aware. And for me, at least, it has been very useful, even though I have already talked with you a lot. And I hope and sure that it has been useful also for the other ones. And useful, I think, per se, for the single ideas and actions that you presented, but also, I think, to really start to imagine how in all our DESIS Lab, in our schools, we should start to think, to open some line of research in this direction. So I don't want to make it very long, but I want to say something that could help to bridge your presentation with something else that we have done until now. And then we have time to open the floor to other friends and colleagues. So practically, I think I will not summarize what you said, but just to underline that beyond presenting very shortly, but effectively, the situation in which we are. So we are in the catastrophe. I like it a lot what was in the last slide, where I don't remember now who told it, but he said a catastrophe is when we very suddenly switch in another condition where everything that was normal is not normal. And we have to imagine what does it mean non-normal. And for instance, just to give a note, if we think that we can use digital devices, we assume that we have electricity, but it's not said that we have electricity, or at least we have what is stored somewhere, but afterward it can finish. So when we think what could happen, we have to imagine scenarios in which also we can be without electricity. So this is when the unthinkable can happen. And nowadays, I think that to imagine that the unthinkable can happen after the COVID, in some way, it became, if you permit me to play with words, it make thinkable to think that the unthinkable can happen, because nobody could imagine that a small virus could block the planet in the way in which it did, include what was assumed as the economical machine that everybody was saying since decades that was impossible to stop it, a kind of a natural law that imposed that the machine had to work. Well, we have seen that it is grave, but it can be stopped. And the small virus did it. So we saw something that was really unthinkable, to see a port in China closed and stopped without people working on it, as we've seen for many decades. So we have to imagine, obviously, we cannot imagine the unthinkable. So this is very important. So we cannot prepare ourselves for what is not possible to imagine. But we have to create conditions in which, if something unthinkable happens, we are in the best condition, in the tragedy, but we are in the best condition to survive, to move on, to react, and to learn from what it happened. And in one word, you know, this is what is the meaning of the term resilience. Now, the term resilience can be also overused. Maybe people can be tired to listen about resilience, but resilience is a word. So we have to be capable to be resilient and, or somebody said anti-fragile. I prefer maintaining the term resilient. But in any case, the meaning also of the anti-fragile concept, that means to react, and to react in a certain direction, not coming back to what you was before, but learning from the experience. And in my interpretation, if it's resilient of something that is also social, including human being, we can assume that the human being are also capable to learn. So we are not simply to react, going back, trying to go back where we were, but also trying to learn from what we learned and move in a situation that hopefully will be better. But in any case, so you present very shortly where we are, and afterward you presented something that already appeared. So you did what you did very, very well. Or this is probably the beginning, trying to collect example in which somebody did something interesting that could be using existing technologies in different way, or the chapter about digital things, but also how the groups and the organization reacted, and how they prepared, and afterward they reacted, and afterward, after something happened, they learned and they tried to organize some social forms to permit to be attentive of what is happening. Well, I think I will not repeat what you said very clearly. I only say that this is very similar to what we did 10 years ago, so 15 years ago. So when we started with social innovation, now I talk for myself and the group of people that we were together, we did not have any idea of social innovation. Now everything is sufficiently clear, at least that wave of social innovation. But at the beginning was really looking around and tried to pick up some interesting thing that happened, and creates a list and try to cluster them to find a way to tell the story. And then what we said was to amplify the signal. So to see some example and use our capability as designer. The first role as a designer was simply to make it more visible. So by this point of view, Beatrice did a good work, because for us, because you put together many different weak signals, and on this direction, you put together, you give some name, you give a category, and you present it to us. This is a way to amplify the signal, and I hope that some of us will take this same kind of activity, and maybe we will be capable to create a first catalog of what could be done for. And afterward, also, and this has been, in my view, extremely interesting because telling what design can do, you have chosen a very, in my view, very modest and effective way. So you and we, no one of us can now stand up and say, so ladies and gentlemen, the design has to do this and that, because we don't know yet. But you simply said, you said what, with a lot of effort, you have done until now, that has all the quality and also probably the limit of something that can be done by you and some colleagues of yours trying to start in doing these kind of things. So I think that also this part is very interesting because it shows that beyond what should be done by big organizations, what should be done by institutions, each one of us, if we want, and if we can, if we want, we can do something. So it's not something that has to wait for somebody else to do some big choice. We can do our choices in the limit of the freedom that we have as a professor and researcher in the university. We can do something. And this has been probably the main reason for DESIS was we as professor have a relatively open perspective of what we can do. So if we find out some direction that is important, it's very important to follow it. We can do it. And even though it's small things, it's something that starts to create some knowledge and something that can be shown. So I pass through what you said simply to underline how important it is, because you are very modest, so you tell it as something that is quite normal, but it's not normal. There are not many people, at least not many people, no one that I know. Maybe there are, maybe hopefully someone of the audience will stand up and say, no, but we are doing something. But until now, we have not found that. So what to say more than this? Only one thing that is very linked to my, not to me, to my personal, but to what we have done until now. At the end of the day, in between many different stories that appear in your conversation when you say what could be done, but if we could say the main fundamental one is when you said we had to bring what to do to be the most possible prepared to any possible catastrophe is to give the power to organize to the people and to bet on the possibility, as you mentioned, as Amartya Sen said, of having people with capabilities. So to tell the story of designing to improve people capabilities and designing to help people to coordinate and to be, when you say we have to give the power to react, to organize people in the place, the local one, it's a way to talk about communities in place. That means groups of people that knows each other and know the place. And for sure, in the example that you did and many others that we could probably find out, the solutions, so not the solution, but the best way to react. So the society that reacts better to a catastrophe are those in which there exist a group of people that know each other and know the place. If you have individuals that do not know each other and do not know the place, so they're rooted. They are the one that when a catastrophe appears, they are simply waiting for help. The other one, knowing the place and knowing each other, can have the possibility to start to do something even in the worst possible condition. So I think that this is the most important, if I had, not the only one, but probably for me at least, the most important observation that we can do on what happens and what we can learn from these catastrophic events. And to conclude, this is practically the same thing that we say when we said what we want to do in general, also before this presentation. So if we say one of the core activity that social innovation taught us that to be developed to move toward a better world, to move towards society, a sustainable society, is largely to reorganize communities linked to places. Maybe they are hybrid, maybe they are related also to the digital space, but they have also to be physical people in proximity one to the other one, and rooted and in a place. That means that they know the place in which they are. So, conclusion is that or at the end of the story, we have to do exactly what we did until now. Yes and not. So we have to do something that we did until now, because the best way to prepare ourselves and who will do it toward the catastrophe is to have the most active and resilient community in place. And at the same time, this is a way to prepare for a catastrophe and also to prepare on the long run for a better society. What changed? That this one has a totally different level of urgency now. And secondly, as you did a first list, what the community can do together could be also diverse than what we did until now. So I think that to have a community of place that organize I don't know, a community garden, a vegetable garden, a party in the street, a way to take care of the kids, all these things has to remain. But there are also community, or the same community has also to be catalyzed by, as for instance, some example that you did to take care of the water, the level of the water in the river. That is in some way to include, for instance, some element of what is called the citizen science, because at the end, those people, the guard that was looking to the river, was working as in the citizen science way. So many citizens are put in condition to make some, to get some information. So I will not go on. I only say there is something, luckily, whatever we did until now is not in opposition to what has to be done. Because at the end of the day, the key word, both for future, avoiding future catastrophe and facing the present one, is to help people to go together and to be knowledgeable of the place in which they are. What we have to add is to create this going together, not only for all the activity that we have seen until now, that still will remain, but also driven by more directly linked, something more directly linked to environmental issue and to the potentiality of risk that comes from there. Good. So thank you, Beatrice, so much. Maybe you can also add something now, and afterward we will see if there are people that want to make some comment or make some question. Beatrice?
Thank you very much, Ezio. Of course, I approve everything you said. I just wanted to add maybe something which seemed to me important. We are prepared as designers to face complexity, to face different topics and different disciplines. But what I've noticed that there is very few, to my knowing, very few people, very few designers who wanted to work with civil security. For example, I work with people who are engineers, who are firemen, who are working at the defense civil security, and they are very interested in our approach, but in a return, we are not interesting to their work. So I think it could be interesting for us, for the community of design, to go beyond this and to help to think out of the box. I will note another example. In France, the Ministry of Defense of Army, they to be prepared to the next war, and they ask, for example, science fiction writers to help them. And I didn't want to go with them. That's not the point. But I think it was a weak signal. It's interesting. We are facing the unknown. So to face the unknown, we need creativity. We need inventivity, and I think the designers have their place in it, and we have also our place to invent also, and to be prepared to the third way between utopia and dystopia, because I think it's important to trigger for action, because if you don't want to see what's faced in the future, you don't change, and if you are depressed, you don't move on. So we have to find a way between. But thank you very much, Ezio, to welcome me in this wonderful network. I'm pleased to answer to a question.
I see that someone has made a question on the chat. Mayra Alvarez, do you want to ask the question instead of having just something in the chat?
Okay.
Yes, Mayra.
Hi, everyone. It's Mayra from Mexico City. I'm currently a designer working in a master's in future studies. So I'm very curious about what skills would you consider are the most crucial for designers to approach these challenges? Thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you for this question. It's very interesting. At the moment in my at Nîmes University, we are focused on social sciences, because as I said, the catastrophe does exist because there is human factor, because there is a human people. So if we don't understand the cognitive and the psychosocial mechanism, it's difficult to provide the best solution, or to engage inhabitants. So there is, of course, different skills. And for example, if you are working on a nuclear risk, or working on natural disaster, or working, you have to learn about the processes, or industrial risk also, because there is some difficulties to understand, which are really helpful to understand the project. But in fact, when you are engaging as a designer, if you working on transportation, or fooding, or health, you have to develop also different skills for these topics. But for me, the core is to understand the psychosocial mechanism, and also in a way to engage people to change. I don't know if you...
Thank you, Beatrice. In fact, there are some schools in Denmark that are teaching empathy to kids. That is quite important. There is another question on the chat. I think is Kadri Kangro. Are you there? Do you want to ask the question?
Yes, hello. Thank you for a wonderful webinar. My question is more related how these kind of initiatives to support the engagement of citizens in community, from where the initiative should come. Is it comes from inside the community, or is it can be forced from outside? And maybe this question is broader. Who is leading the process? Who is responsible that this kind of processes will happen in communities? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a really a good question. I think you can provide ferment, you can help the communities, but you will never force, because even if you forced it, even if you succeed to put people together to deliver an action, it won't last during time. It won't be sustainable. So I think you have to feed the willingness of the community to engage in change, but you will never force it. You will never make social innovation. You have to feed it, but you will never force it. So
yes, my question maybe is, yeah, sorry, is it's a responsibility of designers, or for example, responsibility of local government?
No, it's the responsibility neither designer nor the government. You have to provide a healthy environment to make the social innovation grow, but neither designer or local institution. And the problem is, as designer, you can't stay for long with the community. So you have to imagine something which could last after you leave. And it's most of the time the problem for the researcher, because when they are on their field, it's okay. It's people are happy to help to do something to move into action. But when they go back to their university, and they have to imagine that something is falling down in the motivation of action. So
we have 4 people that have raised their hands. I don't know which one, who was the first one, but I will give Spiros the floor. Do you want to? And then it's Eldo Paul, Carla Chipol, and Manuel Maria Valdorio. So then I will call you. So Spiros.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation, Bea, as well. It's very interesting to me because it's also very close to a chapter I've been writing this past summer, exploring this idea of post-collapse design, because it's kind of a hard truth, but the IPPC assessment this summer actually kind of set the light to we should not be afraid to say that we need to consider what's happening when the environment tries to get rid of us, because it's homeostatic in a way. And I agree with Ezio, and I agree with you, and I think this idea of resilience is the crux of the matter. It's about kind of creating the capacity to create tailor-made solutions, because I live on a small island in the Aegean Sea. Some people live in different parts of the world, and the challenges that we're going to face are going to be completely different. Some of them are going to be the same, but some of them are going to be completely different. So it's more about creating a methodology to build resilience against the different challenges that we're going to face, and less about creating a global solution to all these problems. This was in the 70s, maybe we could have, but that's 50 years ago. So first off, I just wanted to say that I completely agree with your presentation and your ideas, and I found a lot of my ideas echoing in your presentation. And I would like to kind of ask about, and I think it's something that the both of us have had the chance to talk about, the idea of degrowth, in a sense. This idea that you said doing eco-modernist, eco-design stuff, it's really less bad, it's not more good. And I think that we can try to reduce our carbon footprint and create new green materials, but at the end of the day, if we don't stop consuming more, if we don't degrowth, I don't see any future where it's possible to actually be safe, because I think that's the word we're looking for. It's safe and flourishing and happy and beautiful, not economically viable or any of that mambo jumbo. So I think that's my main input. It's less of a agreement and less of a question, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Spiros. Yes, I know we have the same roots of reflection about eco-design and sustainability, and it's very important to have this background in our mind when we are thinking about it. what I've found about degrowth, which I absolutely agree with you, I found it that it's not desirable for people. I mean that when I was talking with people to try to engage them in this way, and I was thinking also when the first time I read the Papanek book of this, and I thought, wow, it's such a powerful, it's such a wonderful, it's a fantastic idea. But I was a little bit despite by the what he provided as a designer. I mean, you have to create something with an aesthetical aspect and also an aesthetical projection in our mind. And that's why I try to catch it with design fiction, because if we won't provide a desirable future in the degrowth movement, we won't caption people in it. We won't involve people in it. So that's the problem, to my opinion, at the moment with degrowth. And after, we have also to think about economy. People need to work, and if everyone is stopping consuming, it's possible, maybe. But what are we doing as work here? So we have also to face this, and it's a big challenge anyway. So, but thank you for this.
So, Aldo Paul, did you raise your hand? Yeah.
So my name is Aldo. I'm doing my master's in Open Society Technologies. I'm currently in Estonia, Tallinn University. I have, it's not exactly a question, but I want to know your perspective on it. I came across like, I'm in the initial stages of learning what about social innovation. So any lack of knowledge in my question, please excuse that. So one thing I really liked is the process of co-creation, where let's say a scenario as flood was set up and people were involved in finding ways to solve it, or how they would react to it. Like Mr. Ezio said, we cannot think of the unthinkable. So my thinking is that why don't you have a co-creation process where you think of possible catastrophes, like very innovative, very new catastrophes? Like what do you think how can it be beneficial? Like what new things and new design concepts can you come up with that? Second idea is during the design process. So we cannot design for everything, that is not possible, but we have already certain set of designs for catastrophes. So is it possible to come up with dynamic design that can be adapted to any new catastrophe that can be? Obviously, the existing models for different catastrophes will have a certain design pattern. We can figure out what are the commonalities, and from there can you fuse into something that can be, like a plug anywhere you can put. So yeah, these two ideas I want your perspective on us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure that we can have something which could be useful for every typology of catastrophe, because of the context, because there is also, I didn't have time to develop it, but in the catastrophe, there is also the cultural aspect which is very important because the society and the community are different, organized all over the world. So their needs are the same. They need to eat, they need to drink, but after all, the composition and the cultural and social links are different. So it's important to understand it. And if, for example, there is an earthquake, it will be different from nuclear or what happened in Fukushima, for example, because different infrastructure has collapsed, and so the needs are different. But I think, and appreciate your intervention, because what we can do as a designer, because there is really few things that are almost absolutely new, but we are used to think with analogy, you know, to compose and to conceive with analogy. And what was done, I mean, there is lots of things which was done in humanitarian design, and what's done for a refugee. I think we can, it can be very inspiring and very helpful to do it, you know, with analogy. So maybe we can dig on this way to think of it. But thank you, and I'll be happy to go on, because it's a short time.
The all-purpose design model might be difficult, I understand. So what about the co-creation for finding new catastrophes? What about that idea?
Of course, co-creation it's really, really important to co-create, and especially in catastrophe, because as I explained, you have always your own perspective, and the cognition and the way to react is different from individual to another one. So we need to think collectively, because the catastrophe is collective. It's different from I have a problem because of my health, because of my my work, and so else. We are facing the same problem at a very large scale. So we need to co-create it. I think it's important, and I hope I showed it through the community of internet user who co-create away from the ground where the catastrophe has happened.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm happy to see that we have a very interesting audience that are asking questions. So Carla Cipolla, nice to see you.
Hi everyone. I have lots of friends and colleagues here in the network. So I would would like to thank you very much, Beatrice, for your presentation. It was very inspiring. And I would like to move to, because I have been part of DESIS since long, and I think that this event is being very meaningful and important in this moment. We are a network that have a lot of nodes all over the world, and we have different kinds of challenges where we are. And for example, in Brazil, food insecurity has raised. So we have also floods. We have everything. So, but we have people here from many. So we are very global, and this is a challenge. This is a force, and this is a challenge for us, because we have different kind of things to navigate and challenges to navigate. So this is the first comment, and I think that we could have a moment to discuss these differences or challenges we are facing, also to share between us, because our DESIS Labs have really facing different challenges. And the second point is that I think that this event is also a point for DESIS of reflection in this following. Ezio has written a text where he stated the difference between design for social innovation and social design. And he has placed social innovation strongly related with social change. This is also a point of other authors. So social innovation is about social change. And I find it quite interesting, because there is also important questions for us in this moment. And social design, but this is not important, but just to talk about social problems and social change. And this is something that we as DESIS are facing right now because of all the situation we are living, because we have catastrophes that are like floodings, a lot of people, but we have small things that happen all day. When I go around, I see people hungry or something like that. So DESIS Labs are facing maybe now lots of social problems. And we are, this is the second point, that how we can solve and work to these social problems that can be very urgent, but also promoting social change. So how we concile these two dimensions. And because, of course, if someone is hungry, you just need to do a collaborative network to give to someone to eat. This is very urgent. People need to eat. But there are some situations, I think, that DESIS Labs are challenged between this and how to work together, because we also needed to change the situation behind these challenges. So these are two comments, very general, and just to share with you some concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. I don't think you have put a question, so I will give also the opportunity to Manuel Maria Valdorio, has raised
Hi.
hand. Hi.
So I'm from Coimbra. I'm studying local cultural politics in the University of Coimbra, but now I'm doing my internship at DESIS Lab here in Milan. And I was listening to you, and I was actually thinking about two different things. One is that there is already an organization that has a compilation of tools for dealing with survival skills, community engagement, sensibility towards nature, and even an intergenerational approach. And actually, it's I think it's an organization that has the power to make long-lasting changes, because it really starts in young ages. And they've got gamification approaches to, for example, imagine scenarios, and even to make up solutions for it, and even to manage resources and teach it to the community. So I don't know if you ever interacted with scouts in this context of making partnerships, but the fact that there are like local, regional, and international delegations can be very, very useful, because there is already something going on that work of preservation for nature, for example. And I was also thinking about the concept of compassionate capitalism, which is an answer for what should we do if we stop, like how is the world gonna develop if we start consuming the way we are? Because there's this concept of prosuming, which is like consumers becoming partners with the producers, and the money being redistributed from the profit caused by one another. So it's actually a mutually beneficial system. And I think it's a very good thing for also you to research and include in this. So it's really not a question, but the question was actually if you were already making any partnership with the local scouts, because I think that could be a very interesting strategic approach. And also to suggest the inclusion of this concept of compassionate capitalism.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring. No, I haven't linked to this organization, but on the contrary, as you said, I'm sure that there is other people who are working on it. It's just because I don't know everyone. And what you said is very interesting, because I was also thinking I put three thoughts, but there is lots of idea we can share, and we can debate on it. I think, for example, the weak signal of ecofeminism is really an important signal for this, and to engage what Amartya Sen has done in the field of economy, to involve the women, to make them able to take part in the economy in another way. I think it's things that we have to look after, because in the catastrophe, the resilience of the community, especially when they're poor, go through the women and their capabilities to do it. And there is lots of inspiration to have to grab on it. But I like what you said, and I would just a comment for what Carla said before. It's we absolutely have to be empathic with those people, and because when I made interview for people who are living very close to the industrial site, which is very dangerous, when you ask them if they fear from the catastrophe, they said, no, I don't fear, because my own fear is to get unemployed. So I'm working here. I need this industry, and I don't want to think about the catastrophe and the risk, because there is a hierarchy, and that's why I think we need to mobilize the more psychological and all those science to be able to understand the human behavior, the human attitudes about it. Yes, to have a wide scope to understand the subtlety, because as we can see, we are all aware about the catastrophe. We all know that the way we are living, it's going through the wall, but there is really few changes. And Greta Thunberg, she's wonderful, but she hasn't changed at the moment presently the policy in Europe, especially in France. There is no ecology in the political discourses at the moment. So there is something we have missed. So we need to understand this. But thank you.
We have time just for one last question, and it's Hélène de Fraser.
Merci. Thank you, Beatrice. I really appreciate your talk and sharing your insights with us. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. I'm wearing orange today. Today is a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation for the people of Canada, in terms of our relations with our Indigenous peers and colleagues. I'm saying this because I really appreciate the need for work in terms of catastrophe, but I'm also very concerned about, and I have to say that, Carla, you opened up the floor for me to think about the many different places in the world that we represent in this organization. And one of the things that we are coming to terms in the place that I'm at is that there are, beyond sort of science and psychological ways of looking at catastrophe, there are also other ways of knowing and doing and being in this world that offer up possibility. I think on one hand, we're in a situation where it's incredibly hard because we're having to come to terms with it. I recognize, having lived in France for 8 years, it's a very different reality here than it is in Europe. And so it's almost like it's affording us another way of seeing possibility. I wonder if you could maybe, if you spoke about ecofeminism and the role of women, but there's also the role of many other ways of doing and seeing in the world. I wonder if you could perhaps speak to that in relation to your work with catastrophic events and reacting to them.
Thank you. When I was saying about ecofeminism, because this summer I read a book. I don't know how to translate it in English, but it was Octavia Butler. She's a writer, science fiction writer, and I was so surprised that because she was a black woman living in America and being who pay attention to those problematic, she proposed another fiction. She proposed another vision of the future, and I really enjoy science fiction. I read lots of books of it, but I didn't realize that the way you're looking the world could be so different when you are a writer as a woman and as a man. For me, you are a good writer or a bad writer. I wasn't thinking of it before that, but the future she was proposing was so inspiring because she had another vision of it, and I think it was another weak signal to say we have to deconstruct our mentality, even to look after the catastrophe. I don't know if I answer properly to your question, but that's why I react when you say it. But you know, it's for me. It's also the beginning. I'm working on these topics only since 5 or 6 years, so it's really the beginning as a researcher. So I'm really happy to share it with you and to do it collectively in DESIS Network. It could be very very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beatrice. So we are approaching the final of our session. Ezio, I would like to hear something from you because we have been having so much food for thought.
Yes. So thank you so much. And of course, there are a lot of food for thinking, and I will not pick up everything, but I hope we will have opportunity. I want only to underline one point. When we start, so we are facing a hyper complex situation. So wherever we start from one point, we have to consider everything. But at the same time, if we want to make some step forward, we have also to try to understand what is more specific and what are the differences that we have looking to the reality by this point of view. So many people, I will say all the culture that was dealing with sustainability and also the design culture was dealing for sustainability has worked on the issue how it can be, and for instance, all the story about growth and degrowth. And I would say that also for what regards DESIS, whatever we did is not so much the degrowth taken as a concept, but how we can imagine different idea of quality of life and also possible new economies that could avoid to grow, to diffuse well-being. So by certain point of view, of course, this is an open question, but it's in the background of whatever we do. But and the same could be when we start to talk about multiculturalism, post-colonialism, gender. So we also started with modesty, not pretending to have solutions, but we started already to look to things by that point of view. So the issue today will be what add something to our conversation and also to our practices if we finally dare to say that we have to think in a proactive way on what does it mean to face a real catastrophe very near to us, to be in a catastrophe or to be immediately after a catastrophe. So once upon a day, to talk about catastrophe was said to be catastrophist. And the catastrophist was mainly a negative attitude because it was perceived as a negative attitude because it scared the people. And therefore, also for what could be the meaning for what I read myself, I embraced design exactly not to be catastrophist, but to try to propose solutions. A solution to propose perspective, maybe we call also solution, but now we say perspective, scenarios, opportunities. And this is the story of many people in between us. So how to avoid to be catastrophist, not only to say about, oh, we will have catastrophe in the future, but propose a solution. In my view, this is still what we have to do. And we have a lot to do. So this is the first of our conversation, and we will not have all the conversation on the what to do in the catastrophe. We will find different topics. but we like to start today with this one because, if I can say, it's for us as a group, and then we say it with the designer as a group, being out our attitude to be positive. This is something that we must dare to do, even if it is so difficult. And so this has been the beginning. Beatrice, as always, very modestly say, "Oh, I'm studying this only since 6 years, and we are starting now, more or less. So you are our guru. So you are the one that has much more knowledge." Of course, many things are open, and I will conclude. I think I remain also after this conversation, also the Q&A that we have had afterward that have been, I think, very interesting and also sufficiently focused. That it remains, that at the end, the core of what we do in many different ways, using different tools, is to help people to meet each other with empathy and with willing to collaborate. And means also rebuilding trust, mutual trust. That is something that is disappearing. And at the same time, we discovered during the 10 years, there was not only that the people have to go together, but they have to go together also in the real world, to be together in the physical world, and to be physically together, that there is an issue about the physical proximity, and at the same time, that this physical proximity has to be rooted in a place, and that there is the material dimension of the physical material dimension of our relationships. That is so important. And I think that also what Beatrice said, that this aspect of being together and collaborate, also having a knowledge about where we are, is the core. But when we say this, and this is practically what we have always, it's important to see what some ideas Beatrice started to collect. So why the people are together? The people are together because they do something together. And it has been asked, what is come before something from the top or something from the bottom? And I think that Beatrice or Beatrice? Because you write it Beatrice. So
I like Beatrice in Italian.
You write it Beatrice with the accent on the. Yes. In any case, Beatrice, she answered very perfectly for me because she said this kind of things cannot be designed, at least this part, because they have to happen in a complex interaction in between different people, top down, bottom up, all together. So it's a little bit the issue about the chicken and the egg, if it is more on one side or the other side. The important is that it happens, and different conditions it can happen in different way. But once we said that for me, it's the main issue of all the story. There are a lot of different things that we have to see more in detail, because they could be the why the people goes together, because the people can go together to look to the river. They can go together to study the environment by the point of view of the fires. They can go together to take in account where the heat wave happens. So they can, I think that we have to imagine a new wave of social innovation that could be called eco-social innovation. In any case, an innovation that is more attentive, or that can start, the starting point could be, we are going together to map the environment in which we are. So these kind of actions could parallel the one that until now we are talking about eating, sleeping, taking care of the elderly. So the daily life of people. And so this has been and will be also in the future, I imagine, the characteristic of the social innovation we was mainly looking at. Now we have to look very attentively, and Beatrice show us something of people that goes together to do something that is not directly related to their own daily life immediate, but to what is happening with the river, what is happening with the heat, what is happening with the fire, what is happening with the vegetable. So moving on this to create something that could be different. And this, in my view, is what we have to learn. And also some tools that have been developed are very, very interesting. And maybe we can find others, and we should create a kind of a group that is capable to confrontate, to go beyond the conversation that we can have today, that has been very interesting, but of course with the limit of a conversation like this, and really try to listen, try to collect, and try to have a repository of good ideas that could generate this community of place that are active in doing something that's more directly related to the risk of the catastrophe. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you. I just would like to thank you all and to thank Ezio and Beatrice for accepting the challenging of putting together such a meaningful conversation. Thanks to all of you. I would like to just as a closing remark that say that unfortunately the scenarios that we see almost every day on the news are, as Beatrice said, not scenarios from a scientific fiction movie, but they are real. So they are natural disasters and climate radical events like the fires in California, or the earthquake in Haiti, or the volcano eruption now in Canarias, or the earthquake in Greece and Turkey, the floods in Germany, all the catastrophes that we have been living during this year. And it was really inspiring to see all the examples that you have showed, Beatrice, from hackers against natural disaster, the humanitarian open street map, the citizens' actions on flood risk, etc., etc. So it's really inspiring for all the DESIS labs that they can start also working on this kind of projects. Of course, I think it's important to prepare the future design generations to tackle these problems and to act on this context, but also to prevent this climate, at least the natural ones, we can't prevent, or as Spiros was saying, like it's the environment saying, okay, go away. But at least if we can try to prevent some of these climate events with a line of research, as you propose on these topics. I think if the design community starts a line of research on these topics, it's fundamental to prevent something in the near future. Of course, in particular, I hope that all the DESIS labs in the DESIS network can start working more on these topics, on these issues, to try to have a more active and resilient society. And I hope to continue this discussion further on. I think we can start having one-to-one conversations if we want. And I also, just to conclude, will also like to say that we will have a series of events until the end of the year. We will have a DESIS event at the conference Cumulus in Ecuador. We will have a DESIS Café hosted by DESIS Lab from Northumbria University. We will have also the DESIS students, the second challenge from DESIS students. And I hope you can contribute and be present during these events. We will let you know the dates for these events. And thank you very much for being here and for such an inspirational conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Ezio.